Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of The Gentleman, a great series premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I've never seen the original movie. I didn't even correlate it because I knew this was a Guy Ritchie series, but I didn't even correlate. I'd actually kind of forgotten, right, he did a movie called The Gentleman. Looking it up, really Googling it really quickly. Obviously, I tried not to look up too deeply in anything, but based on what I've seen, this is kind of spin-off of the movie. At least, maybe this is stuff that came out before the show actually dropped, but there's not supposed to be any direct correlation to the movie. It's supposed to be potentially set in the same universe, but we're going to follow different stories and characters, but it's going to be kind of a similar theme and feel and vibe. So if there are references and winks and nods to the movie, it's probably going to go over my head. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know that now, but there shouldn't be any correlation to the movie. But like I said, some of that stuff I was reading might have been before the show came out, because the show didn't come out until today at the time of me recording this. But either way, putting all that aside, we get introduced to Eddie. I was kind of surprised about him having a military background. I thought that was interesting. In fact, he was in the middle of duty when kind of like, I guess, the family handler, Ahmed, shows up to get him because his dad had a pretty bad fall. He's already kind of getting up there in age, but his kind of health's taken a turn for the worse. And so it's going to be like a matter of time before he passes. So what I think also speaks volumes about how powerful their family is, that they kind of went even above, like, it wasn't even Eddie who talked to his superiors about going. I mean, I don't know how that works military-wise. I'm sure that you could get a leave of absence when it comes to something like family and stuff. But the fact is, Ahmed's the one that, like, oh, I didn't wait for you to get word from your bosses to do that. We went to your bosses. I guess that shows how powerful the family is. Or maybe I'm just overthinking things. Like, it might just be as simple as, like, no, him just reaching out on behalf of the family was enough to get Eddie, a leave of absence to, go home. And I think this is so interesting when you get introduced to the dynamics, because initially, Freddie and Eddie are good. It's all golden. It's fine. It's dandy. It's understandable. It's a very solemn thing. Their dad's slipping in and out of it. Sometimes he seems cognizant in himself, but other times he's kind of a little loopy and all over the place. But then after he dies, and because Freddie thought for sure, like, hey, this is a sure thing. I'm getting all of this. I'm the firstborn son, so I'm going to get all the inheritance stuff. I'm going to get the title, the money, the position, yada, yada, yada. Everything is pretty much going to go to me. And then the moment it came down to it, it turns out, hey, it's going to Eddie, which was a slap in the face. We find out it's like, well, Freddie's kind of a degenerate. He's got a drug issue, plus makes very, very bad decisions. He got in bed with the wrong people, and he owes them $4 million, but it's 25% interest per week, and so that is racked up to $8 million that he owes them. So that's what I think is so interesting. Like I said, going back to it, the point is that they were on such good terms, and then the moment Freddie didn't get his way, because it's like, this is what I'm owed, and here's my brother. Oh, you guys conspired against me. It's like, why? I guess, like, why would we conspire against you to put, like, like, wouldn't your, like, mom or your sister put themselves in better positions if they were conspiring against you? But I guess maybe his delusional mind is, oh, you're working with Eddie, because if Eddie gets in a good enough position, he can, like, help fix your deals or whatever. It's so interesting because their dad, before passing, made a point to tell Eddie two things. One, make sure you look out for your brother. He can't do anything without you, which is interesting considering he's supposed to be the older sibling. So it's interesting that the younger sibling has to look out for the older sibling rather than vice versa. But it's, as we can see, Freddie's the screw up at the family, and it seems that Eddie's kind of the child who walked away. It's because his dad was like, oh yeah, you're the one that kind of pissed off with your buddies, I guess, like joining the military and stuff. Like, he kind of left the family behind, and it's just kind of like, I guess their dad had a lot of resentment towards Eddie leaving, and maybe Eddie had his reasons of why he kind of steered clear of the family, whereas like Freddie was just, it's that spoiled rich kid thing of, he's always kind of had things go his way, and it's supposed to go his way this time, and he kind of flies off the handle. Once again, he's probably maybe a little high right now, but it's also a rush of emotions. But it's like, yeah, everyone's kind of sad stricken about the circumstances, but you're kind of flying off the handle. There was also a line of dialogue from Freddie kind of implying like him, Charlotte, and Eddie aren't like full siblings, that they're half siblings, because it seems like Eddie and Charlotte share the same mom who's there, but I guess like Freddie has a different mom. That's what it seemed like it was implying. Like there was some line of dialogue about like referencing like him being fraternal, and I was like, was that supposed to be like a twin thing? But it's like, no, I think it's just, there was other, I forgot what it was, but there was some other line of dialogue that made me go like, wait, his mom, their mom isn't his mom. The mom that's there isn't Freddie's mom. I guess she died some time ago, maybe. But because Charlotte's getting a boat, and she's getting like a 1,000 pounds of an allowance per. Well, we never got on how often throughout, but only like it's like she'll get it until she gets married. Specifically saying to a man, and just all Charlotte could say that was wow. But she got a boat out of it. That means she can go, surf, like travel the world in it. Which I'm curious to see like how much their sister's going to be in this show or not. Just because she kind of like screws off like partway through this first episode, so not unless she pops up. Because he doesn't really talk to anybody. Eddie, once he finds out about everything going on, Freddie's circumstances and the money he owed, plus the business dealings that their dad was mixed up in, he doesn't communicate with anyone about that. And maybe that's kind of his responsibility. He's always had to be the one to be the more responsible one to shoulder everything. It's like, right, pick up the slack of my slacker, like, screw-up brother, while also looking after my mom and my sister, but also maybe never being good enough for my dad, never being who my dad wants me to be. Maybe there's some element to that as well. But yeah, he shoulders a lot of this on his own, trying to find the money, the means. Like, oh, well, if I sell off this particular property, it's like, well, this property's been in your family since like, because it's like one particular part of the property. He's like, I want to sell it off, and it's like it's been in the family since like 1550. There's a paint naked sale that would cover that, because it would be like, ain't it worth like 8.4 mil? But the problem is that particular deal would take weeks, and he needs it by the end of this week, because if he doesn't, it's going to be another mill slapped on top of it. So by the time that painting comes through, he's going to still be like 3 mil short. Well, more like 2.6. No, terrible math. No. Yeah, my math was right. 2.6 mil, like, short in that regard. So it's kind of needs to be handled now, or it's, yeah, because I think even Freddie was like, yeah, they threatened to cut off my dick. He got in business with the wrong person. It's Sticky Pete, which he still goes. I'm like, that is such a stupid thing. Like, oh, Sticky Pete screwed you over. Hey, how about I hook up with him later on in the episode to do business? It's like, you are, once again, Freddie's just, that's just, once again, supposed to showcase who Freddie is, that he's the constant screw up. Then, while this is all happening, Eddie learns he meets Susie, who is she is from the Glass family. She talks about it later on with Tommy. She's like, my dad's doing like it seems like he's 4 years into a 10-year stitch. So it's like, he's locked up for that time. But it's like, while he's away, she seems to be running the operation. Her brother has his involvement, but I don't think he's as hands-on as his sister is. So kind of finding out the enterprise, because I the little bit I read about the movie, because I saw trailers for the movie years ago. I've just never seen it, but it revolves around cannabis. Once again, the circumstances are different. Here it's just like, hey, here's this gang, the Glasses. They have their whole operation. They actually got into the cannabis business here in the UK, which is a very profitable business and worth billions, and they've been able to kind of carve out their own slice in all of this. And obviously, the property that they're doing all this growing and stuff on the Eddie's family's land and stuff is only a fraction, a cog in the larger machine that is their operation. So this place has been kind of kept secret. Obviously, the only person who knows the truth about this whole thing was Jeffrey, because it's like, yeah, nothing goes down on these grounds without me being aware of it. So he knows exactly who these people are. Eddie's not too quick to want to jump into business with him. He doesn't want to keep things status quo. It's like, yeah, things work for my dad a certain way. Doesn't mean they have to work for me. But he's tight on cash right now. He found $2 million in a safe. Apparently, his dad was making $5 million a year, like not on the record. So, because he couldn't find any records of his dad's business transactions and banking account stuff. So, yeah, this money's been off the record, paying no taxes and stuff like that. Like, how, that's always got to be the thing you could worry about the most as a criminal. Is like, how are you paying the taxes? But I'm also like, well, we're also talking about the UK. I'm always, my point of reference for that is the US perspective on it. I don't know what the tax situation is like in the UK, like when it comes to like income tax and stuff like that. I don't know I don't know how the tax situation like sets up. Is it exactly the same way it works here in the US, or is it like completely different? Either way, because of the desperation, he ends up signing up and going along with they hadn't really worked out the whole notion of you can continue doing what you're doing and I'm gonna make my part of the profit. But for right now, resolving Freddie's debt is kind of the more pressing issue. So the 2 mil in the safe, plus he's trying to make another like 6 mil, but luckily Susie was able to talk to Tommy, and their family name, the Glasses, was able to like pull a lot of weight. So she was able to renegotiate things. It's like, cool, let's keep it at the base 4 mil that's owed. Then on top of that, I'm gonna give you $1,000 worth of that good shit. You know, because I also thought was an important thing, and this is probably going to be relevant in the show, is they are able to kind of run their operation. The Glasses are, because they stick to weed. They never touch the powder, which is Tommy's and his group's business. They handle like the more like powder side of things, like cocaine. So it's like, right, we never have to bump heads because we're not in competition, because we both handle two different drugs. So, but it's like, yeah, I'll hand you some of the good kush. She called it some very specific. It's like she was referring to it in a metaphorical sense. She was kind of referencing cheese, which I thought was interesting. I've never heard that be the terminology. I don't know if that was like a specific like British slang for weed that she was specifically referencing, or is that a very generally accepted colloquialism for like weed? Because obviously when you think cheese, you always associate that with money, you know? I've never like had heard cheese used in a metaphorical sense to represent weed. I thought that was interesting. Either way, but he also wants Tommy also wants Freddie in a chicken suit doing a dance, singing a song, and it has to be filmed. I'm like, that's interesting, because at first it's like, oh, I want to do a video. It's like, what kind of video? It's like, it's not nasty. It's like, it's something that's simple, and we can call it even Stevens. So because of that, you're able to bring it down to the 4 mil. At the same time, Eddie's having this conversation with the guy who was interested in buying the place he was trying to sell. Goes, meets him, and it turns out it's the guy's name is Stanley, and he's played by Giancarlo Esposito. In a great part of my mind, I was like, is Giancarlo Esposito in this? Because obviously you just see him like popping up. Like I've been watching, like there was some movie I saw a trailer for recently, and Giancarlo Esposito. I think it was the movie Abigail. I think I'd seen the title first before I even knew what the movie was about. I saw the trailer, and like Giancarlo Esposito, I don't think he's in it much, but he's also got this other show that's coming out later this month called Parish on AMC. So it's just interesting. I mean, once again, it's Giancarlo Esposito. Like he's a great actor. So like obviously you get the opportunity to get Giancarlo Esposito, you're going to get Giancarlo Esposito. You know. But either way, with all that said and done, like Stanley wants that property, and he's willing to pay a pretty hefty price for it. It's actually interesting, the conversation him and Eddie had. There's layers to it that I'm probably not going to get, but I do love the whole conversation of like the reconciliation between, what was the exact phrasing? It's actually the title of the episode, refined aggression. You know, kind of the paradoxical element of that. I forgot the exact wording. I'm going to butcher it, of how the initial phrasing of it started off. Oh yeah, it's like either you're a wild animal or you're in a zoo, and people coming to terms with that paradoxical reconciliation was just kind of interesting, because it ends up being the reconciliation of like humans being both you kind of fall into categories. You either fall in the feral side of things or the refined side of things, and it takes a very specific group of people, very certain individuals, who can come to that reconciliation of just kind of like that dual side of humanity of being refined aggression. And it was just interesting. Like I said, I'm not going to get all the layers to it, but it's like a very like philosophical, because they were referencing a specific philosopher, but I think it was supposed to just be like the interesting contradictional thing that is humans, of how we are. Like once again, we're both wild animals in the jungle, but also at the same time animals in a zoo. It's just really interesting when you break it down like that. And so, luckily, Eddie didn't have to sell the property. He ended up selling some very vintage wine, which covered the other like $2 million he was out. Because he could have sold it on its own and gotten $3 million or whatever. Well, we actually don't know the pricing he actually got, because Ahmed was telling him like, "Oh, you sell this, it'll be like $3 million for the wine." But the problem is, much like the painting he was trying to sell, you'd have to wait a bit. So this was more immediate money. So it was all kind of resolved. I'm like, oh, it all works out. I'm like, there's no way it's going to be this clean of like, you got that $4 million like that. And then we find out, oh, cool, the $2 million that was in the safe, Freddie does the dumbest thing. And hey, I'm placing a bet. I'm working with Sticky Pete again. It's like, also working with someone with a nickname like that. It's like, come on, dude. But yeah, he's betting on a fight that's, oh, it's a sure thing. It's like, yeah, that's what any gambler or fuck up. I don't want to call all gamblers fuck up loves, but it's like, you're deep into shit like desperate like that. I'd consider you. I kind of, there's a overlap between some. Not all gamblers are fuck ups, but there's quite a few fuck ups who are gamblers. So it's kind of that type of situation. So Eddie shows up with Susie because they were able to get inside, because I think the retainer fee, not even retainer fee, the sit down and talk fee, because it was like $250,000 that Stanley had given to Eddie just for the meeting. So they used that to basically buy tickets to get in. And Eddie tries talking to Pete, but Pete wouldn't listen about trying to get the money back. It's like, right, the bet's already been made. There's no getting that back. It's like, and, Freddie's so sure, like, no, it's all good, it's all great. It's like, you're saying all that when you're betting money that's not your own. But I'm sure in his mind, it's like, well, it is my own. You owe me this, because he was kind of making this point of contention early on in the episode of, I saved your life. And Eddie's like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, yeah, like, you almost drowned, and I saved you when you were like 3. He's like, I don't remember that exact event, but I do remember every time you've ever brought it up to try and throw it in my face of how much I owe you for everything. And it's like, he is bending over backwards. He told you he'll handle the debt situation, but you were like, no, I'm going to do it. Because it's just this thing he needs to prove to not only their dad, but to himself of like, I don't need my brother to fix my mistakes. I'm going to be the one to rectify it. Because for him, it's like, I need my brother in my debt. I don't need to be in my brother's debt. I think that's what that really stems from Freddie's perspective. It's just a pride thing of like, I can do this. I'm not the fuck up you think I am, but you are. Because it turns out, I thought when it was all going down, because Jack, Susie's brother, came whispering, and she was like, it's a scam. I was like, oh, it's a fix, isn't it? Like, the fight isn't going to go his way because the fight's like, the guy who's kind of the sure thing is supposed to lose, right? I thought that was it, but it's like, no. Turns out the fix is in the fact is that Pete never actually places the bets. That's why there is no official broker. He'll handle everything, because he's like, oh, I'm placing this bet, but the moment you lose, he pockets the money, and it's like, well, you got scammed. There's not much they could really do about it. It's like, that's kind of Pete's way of handling things. I did love that sequence where, like, the moment Eddie heard that, he's just staring at Pete across the room, and he's drinking, and just the way the camera's kind of like doing that pulsating zoom in and out, and as he stormed over, I was like, oh, he's about to bust some heads open. But Susie's the one that like fixes the situation. Like, hey, once everyone's calmed down, we'll go have a chat with Pete. I was like, is she actually going to have I figured it was going to end with some threatening. I thought there'd at least be some pretense of a chat, which there kind of was. But yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, Eddie should have seen like the subtle quotes that were put around the words chat. And it's like, yeah, they beat the ever living shit out of Pete. He's upside down. They dragged him out to the steps, and he's upside down, being like, yeah, I'm sorry. I truly, from the bottom of my heart, apologize. We're good now. And just Eddie, well, because Susie's like, I don't know, Eddie, Your Grace, are we cool? And just Eddie's just like, yeah. It's like, Jeffrey warned you like who these people were, and it's like he even specifically said they may seem civilized, but they can be essentially barbaric. They can kick that shit into overdrive anytime they want to. So it's like, we present ourselves a certain way, but it's like we can get nasty if we need to, and this is a great example of that. So luckily they got the money back. All they have to do is had to sit down with Tommy, which Freddie's happy about all of it. He's like, oh my god, it got bumped back down to 4 minutes. I could suck his cock. And it's like, oh, I'm glad you said you can do that. He wants you to put on a performance. You're gonna have to dress like a chicken. You're gonna have to sing this song, which Freddie was biting his tongue the entire time. But it's like, all right, I'll do it. Fine, whatever. It's like, cool. And you're also gonna have it filmed. What? It's like, dude, you just said you were going to suck this dude's cock. And he's like, yeah, and that would have been in private, but the humiliation, it's like, what do you, I guess it's like, what reputation do you have to uphold? Like, I would assume most people think of you as a fuck up. I get it from a business perspective. If word got out about that, you'd be humiliated in your circle of friends, of like the upper echelon of people you hang out with. It could screw over future business dealings, because like that will always be toited over your head, so I get that, but I'm also at the same time, you dug your own grave. And even Edward made it clear, like, yo, you're gonna do this, and you're not gonna dance like this or a stripper or that. You're gonna dance like a chicken, and you're gonna do exactly what I said, because I told you I was gonna handle this, and you're going to listen to me. And it's like, sure thing, bro, it's your situation. So curious about him and his, I'm assuming his wife. Maybe that's just his SO in general. Maybe that's just his partner. But it seemed like that might be his wife. Was it Wham Tam is her name? She's so very cavalier about everything. Because she was the one kind of freaking out when Freddie was freaking out at the reading of the will. But she's so nonchalant when she's hearing about the stuff that Freddie's going to have to do. She's just side-eyeing the whole situation unfolding. And she doesn't really give too much fallout, because he's like, okay, I've got to admit I'm a cock. And he's like, yeah, you think I'm a cock, everyone thinks I'm a cock, don't you think I'm a cock, bro? He's like, I think you're a cock sometimes, but there's times when you're not a cock. It's like, what about you, Wham Tam? It's like, well, all men are cocks. What about you, Jeffrey? And Jeffrey's like, doesn't say anything. He's like, thanks a lot, Jeffrey. But yeah, Tommy showed up, got the suit ready and everything, and obviously, at the last second, Freddie's still trying to worm his way out of this. Like, oh, come on, we don't have to do it. I get it, the humiliation, you made your point, but it's like, no. He kind of made it seem like it's not even just his decision. It seems like this is something that, like, his boss is kind of, like, all about. Didn't he mention it being his own brother that kind of runs things? I don't remember. Or maybe he's just working for someone else. Like, it isn't. Oh, I think it is like a brother situation in their regard, too. Maybe I'm misremembering. I don't know. But yeah, Freddie does the thing, and Tommy's being belligerently angry about it, being like, be a chicken, where's the pecking? That's not how a chicken waddles. It's like, I want you, basically, he wanted to strip him of all dignity. It's like, you thought Freddie was being a little extra when he was saying that, oh, you're trying to strip me of my dignity after you've taken everything else from me. Why not take my dignity, brother? But you thought he's being extra. It's like, once again, you dug your own grave. But now it's like, nah, like, Tommy was going ham about, like, what he wanted Freddie to do, and it eventually kind of got to Eddie to the point that he's like, fuck this, like, have you had enough? Let's just get this recorded and it's done. But nah, like, because Tommy wanted to humiliate him even deeper. It's like, I want you to lose your sense of humanity. I want you not to even be a human. I want you to be what you are, and that is a chicken. A chicken is what you are, not just because of performances, but in general. It's like, I could have had you be an eagle, but an eagle flies high, it soars high. It's like, I want you to be a chicken that's nothing and that waddles. You are the lower end of the food chain. You're at the bottom of the food chain, and that's what you are in the grand scheme of things. So it makes you a chicken. Like, it's like, what did Freddie do to piss him off this much? Because we know, like, you owe him money, but other than that, it's like, you had to apologize. But I'm like, what? I guess it's like, you embarrassed me, made me look stupid. Like, oh, right, because I was trying to remember, like, what was the whole thing? I was like, right, I forgot this whole thing started because it was about Sticky Pete, like some investment in the Maldives, and it blew up in their faces. Because he put his own money in, but it wasn't just his money. It was like the gang that Tommy belongs to. It was their money. So I was like, right, I couldn't remember what the initial pop-off was for all of this. So it's like, yeah, it's just, I guess maybe Tommy's the one that kind of really pushed for it. So you screwing us out of $4 million makes me look bad. It's, so like he's just about putting him in his place. I think it's also that element of, you're from a higher rich family. It's like me, someone from a a different class of family. It's gonna. I have the opportunity to one up you, put you in your damn place. That just because you're from this rich, privileged family doesn't change the fact is that you're lesser than me, and I'm gonna prove it to you in this moment. And it just became too much for Freddy. Grabbed the shotty and ended up killing him. And it's like, cool, he's so high right now and just so angry that he just walks out and is just singing the E-I-E-I-O, O McDonald. And as he's singing it, it's like, Jesus. So, yeah. What's interesting, too, because it's like, I don't know if that's supposed to be Tommy's brother, the one that was there with the headphones on, who has a hard time focusing, and he's counting the money. Like, he just is completely unaware. Like, I think he's so fixated on counting the money. It seemed like he's kind of like, he doesn't fully respond, but it does seem like he has some kind of response to what's going down back there before shots were fired. But I don't know what they're going to do about him in the grand scheme of things. Like, I don't know if that was like Tommy's brother, whether that was his son. He just called him like little lad or something. I can't remember what he called him. So it's going to be interesting to see what that takes us. Kind of a hell of a way to end the episode. But I guess, like, I mean, if it wasn't, I mean, Eddie wasn't going to do something that stupid, but I figured Eddie was probably going to beat him up, and that probably would have turned into something nasty. But it's like, no, it wasn't even Eddie that did it. It was like Freddy that broke, which is so interesting considering like this all started with him and now he's caused more issues, which I guess that's going to be the recurring problem this season. Is like it's just going to be a situation where Eddie's going to be deeper and deeper into the shit because of his brother, and it's just like, you started all of this. I mean, to be fair, it started with your dad, and now it's like dad's not here to deal with the consequences of being in business with these people. Now I have to deal with that just to dig my brother deeper out of shit, because it's like, what do? Do we cover up Tommy's death, which you definitely are going to have to? Who do you get involved? I mean, Jeffrey said he makes it his business not to make the glass stuff his business, but yeah, he's not going to probably have much of a choice, because they're probably going to get him involved in disposing of the body too. So it's definitely, like I said, definitely gonna be interesting to see where all of this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.